Okay, we'll get going. I might interrupt a little bit just to let anybody else who might be coming in late. So thank you guys so much for taking time out of your Thursday afternoon to be here. I'm hoping to be able to hold these webinars fairly regularly, get some feedback from you all, both on what you want to hear about, and as well as, what kind of times of days and days of week might work best for you. We're going to cover first some of the essentials, some of the foundations of health and functional medicine, stress management, nutrition, exercise, and sleep. And we will record these and send these back out to you. And then later on, we'll be starting to go over some of the specialty topics. I'll be getting feedback about what you guys want to hear about. Some of the things might be hormone management, both before and after or during menopause. So both during the fertility years and after. Weight optimization, fatigue, gut stuff. So feel free to send me back any requests. And also during this talk today, you can just write your questions down or put them in the chat box. This will be a shortish presentation. That's the format we're going to try and follow, maybe 20-25 minutes to give you the science behind and some tips around these different areas. And then open the floor up for general questions about anything, about any of the protocols that you're working on with anybody here, just regular questions of stuff you might have been reading about or Googling, as well as relative to this specific topic. So without further ado, I might be letting a few people in, but I'm going to hopefully figure out my sharing technology here and we will get going. If there's any questions or requests or comments before we begin, or if you have any technology issues, I'm going to keep the chat box handy. Just let me know if you, especially like maybe Lydia, who could text me if the screen doesn't look correct or anything. Just let me know. Okay, awesome. Let me get rid of that grid a little bit so I have less things coming up. Okay, so stress resilience. I picked this topic. Number one, this is actually one of the original areas of research I got to do in physiology, testing the physical effects of psychological stress in mammals and rats in the case. And it's one of the areas I think that's really, really important to the rest of the foundations of health. We might be asking you to make nutritional changes, or you're working on that in your life, working on sleep, movement, exercise. And often what's required to do that is stress resilience, and what can be getting in the way of making proper food choices or being able to get to sleep and stay asleep can be stressors. So I thought it was a good place to get started. All right, so okay, so make sure that's correct. Here we go. So this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to really define what stress is. We're going to talk about good versus bad stress. We're going to define what stress resilience is, and then I'm going to hopefully give you some daily things to do to help develop your stress resilience. The sort of extreme example I always give is, people coming out of wars and extreme difficult situations who come out stronger, more resilient, more equanimous, more balanced, more calm than they were before going into it. So without trying to hold ourselves to ridiculous standards or anything, I think it's important to know that stressors in our life do not have to mean our own decompensation physically and mentally, if we take it as an opportunity to develop stress resilience with the right tools. So hopefully we'll be giving you some seeds for that today. So some of the different areas: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. One of the things I'll drive home pretty strongly is there's no such thing as a non-physical stress. Mental, emotional stress is molecular. So I'm going to use the words mental versus physical, but just know that mental is molecular. And I'll go through some of the physiology of that as well. So what is stress? So really we're talking about here about a stressor. Most of the time when we use the word stress, we're thinking about what this picture kind of shows us, which is someone under mental or emotional stress. But really a stress or a stressor is any stimuli that results in a disruption of homeostasis. So homeostasis is basically this balanced area that our body wants to keep us in, that we can function optimally in. And it's self-regulated. We have intense physiologic molecular controls to keep ourselves in this homeostasis, in this balanced middle area. And so a stress response is both the physical, molecular, as well as behavioral adjustments that we make in order to respond to any stressor, any disruption to homeostasis, to try and get us back into homeostasis. So this is homeostasis, or as you can see here, is homeostasis, to give us an example of a stressor adaptation loop. We see Homer's brain registering a change in temperature. We see on the left heat. When his brain registers heat, it makes his body sweat in order to get rid of heat, to adjust to be able to maintain a normal core temperature and not overheat. That is a stressor and an adaptation. On the other side, on the right, we see the cold stimulus, the cold stressor, and we see him having a physiologic response to shiver in order to keep his temperature up, to keep that stable core temperature. So a stressor is, again, anything that pushes us out of homeostasis, and our body's response to try and keep it in that normal balanced area we need in order to survive. So as I mentioned before, all stress is physical. And so when ever anyone says, oh, it's all in my head, or, am I just sick because I'm emotionally dysregulated? The truth is, in neuroscience and physiology research tells us absolutely. So mental, emotional stressors affect our brain, which sends out signals to the rest of our body, to our stress hormones, immune system, changes our neurotransmitters. It is a molecular response. I used to get to look at rat brains and see how stress, psychological stress, would affect their ability to store memory, how it affected their hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, how it affected their immune system and their gut microbiome. So when we have mental emotional stress, it is a molecular response that affects our immune system, our hormones, and has dual feedback in our brain, as well as being governed by our brain. So the goal of a stress response, even though it might not feel good, like shivering doesn't feel good. Fear and shooting full of hormones, stress hormones, doesn't feel good. But I think it's important to understand that it's our body trying to do what it thinks it needs to do to keep us safe and alive. So shivering, not comfortable, but it keeps our temperature in the place we need to not freeze to death. Fear and anxiety is, in our case, in our human prefrontal cortex, overly developed perceiving of threats, is actually an attempt of our body to keep us safe. It's like, if you're scared of this, you're going to take actions to keep yourself safe. I think I have to let someone in 1 second. Let me pause. How do I do this? 1 second here, sorry. Okay, we're good. Sorry about that. Let me put that back over here. So, where was it? Oh, pardon me. Got a lot of tabs open here. Okay. Okay. I'm not the most technologically savvy person. Okay, so mental and physical stress are both create physical responses. Now, as I mentioned, when we'll talk more about, not all stress is bad. Stress becomes maladaptive. Our body cannot maintain homeostasis when stresses are too big or too long lasting. Then both our physiology, we can't keep up to maintain homeostasis, and we can have maladaptation. So types of stressors, and again, I'll emphasize that stress is not a dirty word. We need positive stressors, so we'll talk more about that. So there is good and bad stress. In science, good stress is called eustress. It's stressors that affect, we are not adapted to yet. And then when they happen, our physiology says, oh, hey, I can't do that right now, but I'm going to adjust my physiology in order to meet that standard. So fitness is one of the best examples of that. And fitness is a stressor that challenges your fitness to be able to adapt to a higher level of fitness. Lots of examples in learning and personal development. And when we're talking about stress resilience, a lot of it's going to come from that side of things. Like, how can we take a negative situation? How can we take failure and bad situations and develop our inner resources to be able to use it as a growth experience? And then there are negative stressors. Certainly a lot of just overt physical stressors are negative, but when we're talking about psychology, it often means being under-resourced for your current demands. And that's where developing stress resilience can become extremely important and helpful, and actually very important for your physical health. So negative stressors include really big acute stressors, like maybe a severe infection, frequently reoccurring stressors, that's episodic. Maybe you're getting sick. I have a friend who is getting sick every month. They've got a 3-year-old, and after 8 or so months of that, she's extremely run down. And then chronic stressors, just stressors that do not let up. They're there every day when you wake up. They don't have to be significantly large, but if they go on for long enough time, that can still mean that we aren't able to maintain homeostasis and we maladapt. Trauma is usually a negative stressor. Again, when we talk about stress resilience and mental resilience, often we can use it to grow personally and develop our inner resilience, but it's definitely a negative stressor. And in psychology, we talk about big T trauma, overt abuse, physical, mental, emotional, war, famine, those sorts of things. And then little t, maybe just being belittled every day is a little t trauma. Environmental, so this is more on the physical side, air pollution, water pollution, noise, overcrowding, unsafe living conditions. I didn't put it here, but modern processed food could probably be an environmental pollutant. And then psychological. And again, when we're talking about stress resilience, a big part of stress resilience can be tapping into staying present-minded and assessing what is a real threat, what is really something that we need to deal with, versus what is our perceived threats that we're projecting into the future or the past. So we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about stress resilience techniques. And then physical, negative physical stressors, illness, nutrient or calorie deficiencies, sleep deprivation, which is a big one, and physical injury. So positive stressors, and these are the things that we actually kind of want at least a certain amount of, depending on our resources, our internal resources and our support systems. But again, if there's too much of it, and we're not getting enough sleep, we're not getting enough nutrition, we have big T or little t trauma going on, we can maybe not be able to have the stress resilience and adapt to have these be positive. So personal and emotional growth. This is just a huge topic that we're just brushing over here, but when we're talking about stress resilience, and we'll get down into some of the daily habits, taking emotional or mental challenges in our life and using the stress resilience techniques to help us be able to develop maybe even into a stronger, more true version of ourselves, to overcome them, to get through them. But a certain amount of stressors in a lot of research we show are actually really essential to living our best life. Learning and education. So again, the brain is a physical thing. Just like fitness is for the body, learning and education is to the brain. We want to keep our brains stimulated. We want to keep learning, taking courses, even just doing your Sudoku and crossword puzzles to keep your brain sharp and developing. Travel, that is a really positive stressor in a lot of the times. Being able to stay flexible, being able to adapt, meeting new people, new cultures. Again, it goes back to learning as well, and making new friends. This isn't a stressor for everyone, but for a lot of people, meeting new people, investing and opening up to new people can be stressful and is really, really important. Connection and relationships is science tells us an essential part to human health. So these are the scientific terms for good and bad stress. So Latin, I believe it's Latin, maybe it's Greek. I think it's Latin. U means good stress, and then distress. So for example, we want appropriate amounts of eustress under well-resourced conditions. So learning for a goal, a job or hobby, training for a fitness goal, and challenging yourself to meet new people can be examples of eustress. And again, when you're properly resourced and not run down. Distress, abusive relationships, inadequate sleep, that internal negative self-talk, chronic inflammation and an inflammatory diet. And these are a lot of the things we'll work on in functional medicine. And here's kind of the example of how stress of any kind or any amount over a long enough period of time can deplete our ability to adapt to it. So this is a general adaptation response. It's generally applied more to negative stressors. But even under negative stressors, you will have the ability to adapt and keep going. But over long enough time or severe enough of stressor, your physiology literally fails to be able to keep up. So a lot of people have heard of adrenal fatigue, which your adrenals don't really get tired. But what happens is the brain yelling at the adrenals to keep pumping out stress hormone. Eventually the adrenals, as a way to protect yourself from those high levels of stress, just stop responding to the brain. And now your adrenals are underperforming and not putting out enough cortisol and adrenaline. And now you feel exhausted and maybe sad and depressed. So when we're talking about health optimization, mental health optimization, we want to look at the very real physical process of the physiological decompensation from too much or too long a stress and too under-resourced a person. So that's a little bit about stress physiology. I'm just going to check if there's any general questions about this. If I can find my chat box, where to go? I think we're okay. Okay. So again, this is, I'm trying to help you understand the physiology of stress, to understand that even mental emotional stress is a physical process, that stress is not all bad. You actually want to seek and have proper amounts of stress in your life. And you want to keep yourself physically resourced and emotionally resourced, because we really do become stronger, more true versions of ourselves when we are stressed and we have the resources to adapt. That's really what develops us as a human being, both physically, mentally, and spiritually. So to that mind, how can we develop stress resilience? How can we use stress resilience techniques to help us with our health goals, to meet our health goals? So in functional medicine, we're always talking about root causes, and we can't make different nutrition choices or lifestyle choices or relationship choices that could be maybe harming us if we don't resource ourselves with stress resilience techniques and development. So, excuse me. So Dr. Ann Maston is a psychologist who's done a lot of research on resilience, and she defines it as the capacity of a dynamic system to adapt successfully to disturbances that threaten the viability, the function, or the development of that system. And we all can bring up examples, and I might ask people to share examples of when a supposedly negative stressor that came into their life actually forced them to make adaptations, to cut out things that did not serve them either mentally or physically. And actually the process of developing stress resilience and adapting to this negative stressor ended up being a good thing in the long run. So we want to develop that some more. So how do we improve our stress resilience? First, we want to be well-resourced. The better well-resourced that you are, the more you're able to stay grounded and overcome and adapt. So number one, we need to start out with the physical, proper and enough sleep. And that is really defined as 7 to 8 hours. But I can't overemphasize, if you're someone who has had a lot of health issues, fatigue, sleep deprivation, that, you know, we want to err on a bit more rest. So a lot of people, it took me a few years in practicing, and I wanted to, one of my specialties was chronic fatigue syndrome. And I had people coming to me who wanted, you know, their fatigue to be fixed. And it might've taken me a year or two before I realized, wait a minute, nobody's sleeping. Do you have chronic fatigue, or are you not sleeping? If you're not sleeping, mentally, you're going to break down. Physically, you're going to break down. Emotionally, you're going to break down. You're not going to be resourced to be able to deal with even normal stressors in your day to overcome them. So sleep is foundational. Often overlooked, but I'll proselytize here a bit about movement and exercise, not because of weight, not because of how you look, maybe not even because of fitness, but tons of research. And if we've worked together, you probably have heard me preach about this a good bit. But for all of human history, none of us, well, maybe some of us were kings and queens and sat around on our duffet, but most of us worked physically all day long. And it's only really been in very, very modern life, the past 30 to maybe 50 years, that modern technology has allowed us to be sedentary. It's extremely maladaptive to our physical and mental health. We need physical stimulation to stimulate hormones, neurochemistry, proper glucose sensitivity to help us sleep better. So caring not at all what you look like or what your fitness level is or what your weight is, if we want to build proper stress resilience, if we want to be physically and mentally healthy, getting plenty of movement, or in modern days, we now exercise, is essential. Nutrition. So, if you're here, you probably know about the gut microbiome, you know about eating an anti-inflammatory diet, you know that processed food, it is an extremely modern invention and is extremely maladaptive to the human body, although some people have certain amounts of wiggle room. But giving yourself proper nutrition so you're not inflamed, so you have the nutrients you need, so you're not feeling brain fog, blood sugar imbalances, will help you be more physically and mentally resilient. And then inflammation, which is a giant topic. And, if you're dealing with that for whatever reason, in functional medicine and all of these areas, but of course, inflammation is one of the areas we'll help you take control of so that it isn't affecting your brain, because inflammation creates mental health changes, brain fog, fatigue. It affects the hormones, and hormones again go back and affect your brain and can cause mood changes and fatigue and so forth. So figuring out, of course, within your life, what might be driving inflammation, and then doing the functional medicine process to continue to improve that will improve both physical and mental stress resilience. So psychological. When I got in again to functional medicine, I was very much into the biochemistry and physiology and, refer out to counselors and that sort of thing. But, the human life is complicated, and a lot of root cause of a lot of health conditions, or even indirectly, the root cause of our choices that lead to health conditions is our lack of training and being mindful and present. And that can be, as anxiety, as not being in touch with our bodies, as just being our nervous system run down because our brains are constantly going and going and going, even when we don't need to be. And so one of the foundational things to improve stress resilience is to develop mindfulness, develop present mindfulness, to not futurize, to not dwell on the past, to allow the nervous system a break. So one of the main things that mindfulness and meditation is good for is a lot of our fatigue and immune dysregulation, hormone dysregulation is driven by our brain constantly being on. It's creating stimulation to our immune system, our hormones, our gut, and depleting it and dysregulating it. I can treat your gut microbiome. I can give your cells nutrients. I can do a lot of things, but, the best way to take the nervous system out as one of the dysregulating variables is mindfulness, meditation, maybe trauma resolution, counseling, those sorts of things. And it's not something I can, really throw pills at, and except for maybe just as part of the support for the process. But if we can stay present, if we can cultivate present mindfulness and the ability not to jump with every thought, with every anxiety into the future or to the past, we will far less dysregulate our immune system, our hormones, and we will not deplete our neurochemistry. So really, really important topic. For psychological, so belief system and paradigms, and our belief systems and paradigms can drive a lot of our fear and anxiety. And what we'll talk about is like the technique to deal with that is often therapy, counseling, journaling, personal growth books, that sort of thing, where the process of therapy and counseling is really the opportunity to awaken to our unconscious belief systems and paradigms that all of us learn from our early childhood and our social interactions and our culture, and examine whether or not they serve us or are maladaptive, if they're driving maladaptations to our mental and physical state. And then through counseling and proper holding, figure out what belief systems and paradigms do serve us. And then connection, relationships, and support systems. Again, I like to lean on science a lot. So this creates really healthy neurochemistry. It creates a healthier immune system. It's correlated with longevity, and people who have good connections, good friendships, relationships, and support systems are shown to have much better stress resilience during either physical or psychological stressors. And then the giant topic of trauma. Maybe that's at the top of some of this, or sometimes it's at the bottom. All of these things can help you work on trauma resolution, but so many people have trauma in their life. PTSD is kind of almost just, we're aware that that's kind of just a human experience to some degree. And so processing trauma out of your nervous system so that you're not living in the present moment from that trauma will take a huge variable of dysregulation out of your nervous system. That'll take that effect out of the immune system and the hormones, and allow a lot more balance and homeostasis, and therefore you'll be far more resourced for other things in your life. So what do we do about that on a daily basis? So here's the physical things, and this is the stuff that we all know, and that if we could wave a magic wand and allow humans to do this, we could probably like bankrupt the healthcare system. The thing I'll point out is that if it's hard for you to, get proper sleep, nutrition, and movement, I mean, that's exactly what we work on here. Either you can't sleep for physical reasons or emotional reasons, and maybe you're not making the proper nutrition choices. But I like to point out that a lot of the time that's due to our old biology in a modern world. So, not that long ago, 50, 100, 500 years ago, most of us needed to seek food, slow down and save as much calories expenditure as possible, hold on to weight as much as possible. And these were really adaptive behaviors under the constant environment for most of human existence of lack of food, food scarcity, no temperature control, famines, all that sort of stuff. So now in the modern world, we all think that we have some sort of like personality issue because we want to eat and lay around all day. Well, that's just our human biology. So, building stress resilience, mindfulness will help us make choices maybe against that sort of more biological drive to slow down and seek pleasurable foods. But what diet should people eat? Basically, depending on some other really specific gut and health situations that you might be dealing with, plants, healthy proteins. Carbs are not the enemy. It's the processed carbs, it's the flour, it's the sugar. As I point out, if carbs were so bad for you, then why are the Japanese the longest living people on earth? But it's really about getting rid of inflammation so that your gut microbiome can tolerate the healthy carbs. And then, I'd like to point out there probably is some wiggle room for some junk. But, with the understanding that processed food is extremely new to human evolution and nobody ever ate it, that it is possible to live without a lot of the processed foods. Movement, as I pointed out, our biology, humans used to work all day long. If we wanted water, we had to fetch it. If we wanted food, we had to fetch it. If we needed to do something, we had to hike to the next town. So basic FDA recommendations are 150 minutes of moderate heart rate activity per week and 3 times 20 minutes of strength training. And then a lot of research is showing, okay, but then also don't just sit all day, even if you get that minimum standard of exercise. To the degree that it's possible, we want to replicate our ancestors that were moving and picking things up and doing things all day long, which is very tricky in our modern life. But to the degree that you can take walk breaks, it stimulates hormones, it stimulates your brain, it's better for your emotions. So just getting sleep, nutrition, and proper movement a lot of times can go a long way to helping us adapt to our mental, emotional stressors, helping our biology work better, and just feeling more energy and mentally more balanced. And then inflammation, remove causes of and or resolve inflammation. This is a whole other topic or PhD thesis. But if you're here today, you probably know that what we're working on there with, of course, nutrition, the gut microbiome, infection, toxins, and then just balancing the immune system, because inflammation absolutely has a dysregulating effect. And if you're inflamed and underslept, you're not going to have the internal resources to adapt to other stressors in your life. I see one question about high blood pressure. I'll get to that in a little bit. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So daily stress resilience tips from the mental and emotional side. If I could wish one thing for you today, to help all other areas of resilience, both physical and mental, it would be some kind of mindfulness and meditation practices. And here's some ways to implement those in your life. Certainly, it could be sitting meditations. It could be using one of the apps, Headspace, Calm. It can be just being quiet and tolerating all of the impulses to distract yourself for 3 minutes. Just sit there and tolerate it. The more that you tolerate it, the weaker it'll get, and you'll have less impulses to distract yourself. A good one to do throughout your day is both hands and feet, and focus on breath. So most of us go throughout our day thinking about this and worrying about that and 5 other things while we're doing 2 things and on our screens at the same time. So instead, I invite you to, when you're driving your car, turn off the radio, of course, put your phone away, and just hands and feet, hands and feet, hands and feet. You can use the breath. That is a nice focus as well. Again, as we're taking our brain, our nervous system offline, we are going to be able to heal and to have more resources for stress resilience. So focusing on the inhale and the exhale, slowing your breath down, centering it in your lower belly. You can do this in a meeting. You can do this while folding the laundry. You can do this all day. The breath is instantly accessible to you. Time in nature. If you're not someone who likes being outside, maybe this doesn't quite work for you, but you might experience it a little bit, just maybe on a screened-in porch, just someplace quiet, someplace without all of the modern stimulations that we're also accustomed and addicted to now, are again extremely new to the human nervous system and can be extremely dysregulating. More quiet, less stimulation, grounding in nature can all really help the mental, emotional adaptations, so that we can have more inner resources to bring to the stressors that show up in our life. I would invite all of us. I thought about maybe starting a challenge, a screen and social media challenge, where you could all sign up and we could kind of pledge to get off social media maybe for a month, see what happens. Maybe you don't want to be on it for even longer, to minimize screen time. To, instead of being on the screen, maybe you have to use your phone for this, set your timer for 5 minutes and do nothing. And again, just sit with the nothingness, and it might annoy the heck out of you. But the more you build the ability to focus on your breath, use your breath to help calm the reactivity, focus on your hands and feet, let the time pass, and realize that all humans used to never have this distraction. Your nervous system will thank you. Your nervous system will be less burnout. You'll be able to handle stressors in your life much, much better, because your nervous system will have had this time to rest and reboot and not be constantly stimulated. On the flip side of that would be sort of really good sources of personal growth or learning. That might be reading a book on personal growth. That might be doing some class, or doing, standing up in front of people and talking. Different types of personal growth and learning. These are really healthy stressors. And by doing personal growth and learning, examining our paradigms and belief structures, getting rid of the ones that don't serve us, developing more adaptive belief systems and paradigms to our modern life, we'll be better equipped to handle both the physical and mental stressors in our life. Connection and cultivating meaningful relationships. It can be, maybe if you already have a lot of this in your life, or maybe if you don't, it can feel really challenging and difficult to figure out how to break through to find people to meet, to open yourself up. If you're already tired and under-resourced, it can be really hard to muster the energy then to go break through the initial small talk and that sort of stuff that most of us don't love, to cultivate those meaningful relationships. But it'll definitely be worth it in the long run. And if you are calming your nervous system down with the stuff on the left, you're getting enough sleep, we're reducing inflammation, eating a healthy diet, you'll have the resources to go do the productive things like cultivating relationships, so that you then have those emotional support systems, you have that connection to sustain you throughout life. And then a big proponent of therapy and counseling, you don't have to be completely distraught at your wit's end to go into therapy, counseling, a life coach. Also, everybody could use a good mentor, a good human life guide to help us live a well thought out and self-examined life. That can really help us understand where we're coming from, what we're worrying about we don't need to, or to develop proper strategies for those stressors, instead of just ruminating on them and circling the toilet and repeating them. Healthy challenges. So that I would maybe also put in the category of do a little something that scares you every once in a while. The things that you think that you can't do. So, I mean, I come from a background of running, and I don't think everybody needs to run or anything. But one of the things you hear all the time about people who never ran a step in their life, and then they trained for a 5K and completed it. Once they have done the work, experienced the challenging and suffering, and then taught themselves that by working hard and pushing through and working for this bigger goal, that mental capacity carries out to other areas of their life. They now have an experience of how strong they are, of how resilient they are. So healthy challenges, finding suitable, appropriate challenges for yourself. Do challenge yourself maybe once or twice a year to do something that you don't think you could do, maybe that might seem a little bit out of your comfort zone. If it doesn't work out, you've learned something about yourself. If it does work out, you're going to really kind of realize how strong and adaptable you are. And then that's going to carry over into other situations that are less in your control, that you are adaptable, that you can overcome. Hobbies, that kind of is in the same thing too, but just keeping your brain sharp, making sure that you are emotionally and mentally flexible, having experience of being able to handle novelty. Novelty. That's what we talk about with rats all the time, is like, how are they able to handle novelty? And then another really, really important foundational thing that I couldn't recommend more is a gratitude practice. We don't want to ignore our problems by just being mindful and blocking them out, or positive thinking. There's proper times in counseling and personal growth to be processing that and examining that. But in our society, a lot of the time we're so, focused on acknowledging that we're allowed to have our stress and our problems, that we over focus on it. We go to therapy and we dwell on it. Reality TV and social media, we're posting about all of our feelings all the time. If we can stay present through mindfulness, through hands and feet, through focusing on the breath, through quiet time in nature and away from screens. And then I really recommend either the beginning or the end or sometime in your day, you take a pause, and in that exact moment, you name 5 to 10 things that you're grateful for. And it doesn't have to be something huge. It can literally be so many things that we take for granted. Temperature control, safe food sources, friends, loved ones, a sunny day. I've got a bunch of plants in front of me. I get to be with you all here today. This is, my life's dream, is to be able to work with you all. There's so many things for us to be grateful for. And if we focus on that, the neuroscience shows that really grows our ability to focus on the good and to predict that good things are going to happen to us. It reduces anxiety, and that has widespread effects on our immune system, on our hormones, on our digestion. So when you're feeling anxious, or stressed about something, it's certainly important to process and work through that. But then also spend a few moments just being present, where very likely not much is going on, and very likely a lot of things to be grateful for are going on. And doing that helps ground your neurochemistry, retrain your neurochemistry to be calm, to be grounded, to not be overworked and to focus on the positive. So here's a few questions maybe to take home with you. We can discuss it here when I'm about to open up the floor. But so first of all, what are your daily stress resilient habits and techniques? And maybe there's some that I haven't mentioned that you could share with us. What are you already doing to help support yourself? And acknowledging that, you know, maybe you can make sure that you're doing that more intentionally. And then what's detracting from your ability to develop stress resilience? Is it physical? Do you feel exhausted? Are you not getting enough sleep? Are you having too much brain fog? Is it mental? Is your mind racing all of the time? Are you in unhealthy emotional situations? And using some of the techniques we mentioned to work on those things. And then from this list, and we're going to share this PowerPoint, what are 2 or 3 things maybe that you think you could start doing to support your stress resilience, augment your adaptability under stressors? So, you know, without, again, holding ourselves to really, really high standards, you know, I kind of point out sometimes something that's helped me in dark times is, you know, not to be extreme, but like Nelson Mandela spent decades in jail and came out preaching peace and forgiveness and leading a country, you know, with whatever else is going on with that situation. If someone can go through as severe deprivation and struggle and suffering as he did and come out with that strong of a mindset, then it reminds me that, you know, I don't have to, but perhaps I can face the stressors in my life and allow them to ground me more and to focus on the things that are good and to be mindful and to make the best of things. So I think that is it. So thanks so much for showing up today. I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm going to, yeah, bankrupt the healthcare system. So I see one question so far. I see, how would you manage high blood pressure related to genetics and age at the age of 77? Have already altered diet, spend several hours a day working on your farm, interested in the alternative to the 3 medications from traditional medicine. So a couple of answers to that. And if anybody else has any comments on that, they can answer. Genetics and biology isn't necessarily in our favor. It sounds like you're doing wonderful things and everything perfectly, and that probably genetically you are fighting that battle. I think I probably should err away from making too many direct medical recommendations, but the supplement L-arginine, it's still not an underlying fix, but it's fixing the root cause, but it can help manage blood pressure. It's a vasodilator. The exercise point, acupuncture, Chinese herbology can do it. And then the other thing, I mean, like when I was younger, it used to be like, oh, we should be able to do everything naturally. We should be able to address the root cause. And, you know, honestly, it sounds like you're doing really great things. I would probably need to know personally a little bit more what's going on to make more specific recommendations. But sometimes we can just consider it a blessing that there is modern medicine for those things, as long as they're not having any side effects. You know, as I jokingly say, biology doesn't really maintain us very well after 40, 50, and there's certain things we haven't figured out about aging. Sounds like you're doing a fantastic job. Chinese herbs, acupuncture, diet, exercise, arginine, those and medications. Those are the main things I know about that. We could check methylation. You're talking about genetics, making sure your B12, your folate, your B6, some of those things, but sometimes a little sprinkle of medication is kind of just something to be grateful for. If you have anything else about that, let me know. So discussing approach to omega-3 and 6 balance, sources, doses, markers. Good question. And since I know you're very much a biohacker, the person who asked this, I probably won't speak to quite as nitty-gritty a detail as you are. I use the test, the NutriAbout organic acids test, so I can't quote actual numbers there. I can actually pull up a sample of that test. Let me do that in a safe screen over here. 1 second. That's FMB. So, yep, okay. So I rely on Nutraval's algorithms. This is how I interpret this. So this is omega-3, 6, 9 saturated monounsaturated fatty acids. This is how I interpret this. And maybe the person who asked this, you can try and drill me down to more detail if you wanted this. Number one, I look to see if you're intaking it. So over here on the omega-3 side, I want to see that you're intaking adequate amounts. Cold water fatty fish. Fatty fish is complicated, and I think this is one of the points you're making out. If we're getting it from the ocean's severely contaminated. Mercury, we're worried about. Overfishing, we're worried about. If you get it farm raised, antibiotics and hormones. So what I kind of say is do your best and make some reasonable choices. Try to get higher end fatty fish. And then also plant sources, flax, walnut, not listed here is chia. So do your best to intake plenty of omega-3. And then as far as 6 balance, I actually really kind of rely on their ratios here to help me run the algorithms for omega-3 6 balance to keep you in the green area. But what I'd say is eyeballing it, I don't want to see these top numbers too high. That probably means you're eating vegetable oils. Grains could mean processed foods. Avocados are also in this family. So a lot of people who think they're doing a healthy paleo, eating a lot of avocados could be getting a lot of omega-6. Processed meats are heavier in 6. You know, dairy can be heavy in 6. So I want to make sure you're not eating too much. Usually this, if you're eating a lot of omega-6s, you're getting a lot of processed food. So we don't want to see those too high on the intake. Each of these omega-6s has to convert to the next type. And this chart shows this. This is an enzyme that converts one fatty acid to the next, along with certain vitamin cofactors. So that's why I pay attention to kind of the top numbers to look at intake, because converting it down the line can mean different things. So I want to see high intake 3, not high intake 6. Omega-9s, I've always been taught have as much olive oil as you want, as you can. This being high shouldn't make too much a difference. Saturated fat, I feel like is a very polarizing topic. Some people vilifying it, other people saying it's totally fine. As usual with extremes, the truth is somewhere in the middle. But for different genetics, it can be important. So people who aren't ApoE4 or 4-3, who don't have a 4 in their in the ApoE gene, they can probably take a little bit more saturated fat. If you're ApoE4 or 4-4, you want to avoid it for cardiovascular disease risks and dementia. And then they come down here and they run these ratios of the omega-6 linoleic to anti-inflammatory dihomogamma-linoleic. You want to be stronger towards the DGLA. And then I really look at the omega-3 index because that crunches the balance of this whole page. We want to be in the green as much as possible, either by increasing our omega-3s, decreasing our 6s, saturated fats. So I'm not sure if that answered. Let me see. Omega-6, I've always thought olive oil is omega-9, but Google can tell me pretty quickly, so I will check that up for you. Thank you, Heather. Yeah, hopefully that, I know you like to get to the nitty-gritty, so I'm hoping that was helpful. Okay. Anyone else have any general questions? A lot of you are patients, so part of this today in these webinars is just if you have general questions about any of the protocols you're doing, you're welcome to ask them anonymously. You're welcome to unmute and ask them in your own voice as well, or if you have any thoughts or comments on the talk today. So I did talk for a much longer time than I thought I did. Anybody who knows me would not be surprised. Okay. Anyway, so I'll just hang out here. Anybody's welcome to hang out. I'm going to hang out to the 4 o'clock hour, and we can either use this as a moment to sense our hands and feet and sense into our breath and just be silent together. And if you have a question, I'll keep my eyes open. So otherwise I will sit here and we will practice just hanging out in the quiet until 4 o'clock. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Well, I did get one more question, and so I'll interrupt your silence a little bit. Approach to exercise recovery. So that's actually a perfect example of stress adaptation, exercise being a stressor. And the entire point of exercise is to force an adaptation. And if we aren't recovering, then there isn't really that much point to the exercise stress. So recovery is just as important to exercise as the actual exercise. Of course, proper sleep. For the most people who aren't working out on a, high fitness goal, athletic level, mainly I would just say the basics like sleep, balanced nutrition. If we're getting into more, if maybe you're having troubles recovering, then I would really thinking about, making sure you're getting a 4-to-1 carb to protein. Yes, I said that right. 4 carb to 1 gram of protein, 4 grams of carb to 1 gram of protein after exercise, making sure you're restocking your glucose stores, giving your body the amino acids it needs. If you aren't exercising that much, you probably don't need to restock your carbs, so that you might just focus on maybe a branched chain amino acid supplement after recovery for both muscle and neurotransmitter recovery. Because we do deplete our stress hormones, some of which are neurotransmitters from exercise. Of course, looking at hormones, if your hormones are depleted, you're gonna not be able to mount that adaptive response to exercise. It's gonna be a lot harder to recover from all of that. So the basics, of course, unless you're training like an athlete, sleep, nutrition, I would try branched chain amino acids afterwards. Honestly, I love, if you're really exercising and maybe you did something pretty intense, and meditation after. So cortisol secretion from exercise, very normal and healthy response. If it's too high, too long, cortisol response after exercise can prolong and decrease recovery. And so there's supplements for that. There's phosphatidylserine, there's ashwagandha, but sitting down to a meditation after you got all of your cortisol and stress hormones and neurotransmitters and you got your exercise high, and then taking all of that chemistry and channeling it into grounded mindfulness and allowing your body to truly rest and recover. Meditation's a great exercise recovery. Once plaque is in an artery, can it be removed or reduced? Everything I've been taught is yes. So certainly working on total lipids and the different type of lipids, are there supplements that can help with cholesterol? Yeah, and I don't want to make too many specific because I don't want you to go out and buy $40 of supplements. But so there are supplements that there's good research behind removing plaques in our arteries. But fundamentally, of course, diet and exercise, which sounds like you're already doing, plant sterols, citrus bioflavonoids, and then depending on how big of plaques you are, if we're also working to prevent them, lipids are just the substrate of which plaques are made out of. And so lipids become plaques when they're oxidized and inflamed. And so by reducing inflammation in our body as well as our arteries, by reducing oxidative stress, and things like antioxidants can really help with that, we're going to reduce the potential of lipids to become atherosclerotic plaques. So there are, of course, diet and lifestyle being the foundation of everything, and actually a lot of research, not to harp on this, but of mindfulness meditation for bringing down blood pressure and improving heart health. But there are some supplements that have research behind arterial health, cardiovascular health, and then also for prevention, reducing inflammation, antioxidants, resveratrol, CoQ10s, alpha-lipoic acid, somatic experiencing, piggybacking off the medication approach. I love a somatic experiencing approach. Where do I feel this activity in my body? More mindfulness practices. Yes, for meditation. Thank you, Lydia. Yes, absolutely. The hands and feet being a little beginning of that. And depending on, I was taught the hands and feet because for some people, if they have trauma, sensing too much into their body or a belly center might actually be really triggering for them. So if that's not the case for you, feel free to use your belly center, your solar plexus, your heart center, wherever is comfortable. If you're someone who maybe has unprocessed trauma, sticking to your pinkies and your toes might be a safe place to go. And having a place and maybe a counselor support to do the more in-depth body experiencing. And again, you're so right, Lydia, like it's incredible to create a somatic practice, so that you are really, that helps people get very present and out of the futurizing and brain activity. And then maybe this is unnecessary for the crowd here, but being aware that if you have trauma, that maybe you stick with your fingernails as your somatic place to focus on. Andrew Huberman has a great non-sleep deep rest protocol on YouTube. Okay, cool. Let me go Google that and I will find it for everyone. Huberman. Non-sleep deep rest. Is it like a brainwave thing? Oh, there it comes up right there. Whoops, it's gonna make a sound.
This is how.
Sorry, ads. Okay, I will put that up here. I'll check that one out too in a bit, Heather. Let's see what he shows us. It's only 10 minutes and 49 seconds. Whoops.
Non-sleep deep rest is a powerful tool that can allow you to control the relaxation state of your nervous system and your overall state of mind. And by doing so, be tingling, could even be numb. It doesn't matter. Focus your attention specifically on the bottoms of your feet.
Oh, so it's like a progressive relaxation, sort of walk you through the body kind of thing. Where's my thing? That sounds really good. Got that. Thank you. What's an indicator of oxidative inflammation? So not to go back to the NutriEval, but there are no, so for cardiovascular disease, we look at lipoprotein little a, we look at apolipoprotein B, we look at an NMR lipo profile. So apolipoprotein B, lipoprotein little a, we look at an NMR lipo profile. So the NMR lipo profile, looking at the different counts for the small LDL bad, more likely to become atherosclerotic plaques, oxidized, inflamed. HDL bigger, fluffier, usually more protective. They look at the different count of that. That doesn't look at necessarily oxidative potential as much as it does look at oxidative species related to cardiovascular disease. On the NutriEval, there are certain oxidative markers. We look at 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine for more DNA, lipid peroxides, more heart. We look at the master antioxidant, total glutathione. These can sometimes mean oxidative stress if they're elevated. This can mean sometimes oxidative stress. So, you know, oxidative stress is an ubiquitous process in the entire body, is necessary for energy ATP creation, fighting off infections, and all kinds of really important things. It's really about having the proper balance of oxidative stress. And too much inflammation, remember, so we're talking about maladaptive processes and stressors. You know, inflammation is an adaptive process to save us from a perceived threat to homeostasis. It's just when it's too much, too prolonged, then it becomes maladaptive. And inflammation breeds oxidative stress, and oxidative stress breeds inflammation. So we really want to think about what the individual is talking about and dealing with, rather than inflammation not being bad. If we didn't have inflammation, every infection that came near us would kill us. You know, that's what flus are for. Oxidative stress drives ATP, or energy creation, or mitochondria. It's part of the defense process against infection. So it's really looking at kind of more specific what we're dealing with that person. So it's technically 4 o'clock. I'll hang out for another minute or two, but I'm just, thank you all so much for coming today. Send us any requests for topics. I didn't think about this before, but we're going to get like a little quiz to send out so that you can tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to hear more of. Thank you very much, Heather. Thank you all very much. And we'll be doing more of these in the future. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here today and for your time.